Welcome back to Brickwall Breakdowns. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean, and I am here with Kyron Samuels, the feature of Brickwall Breakdowns. He is our offensive line expert and insider at Defiant Takes Football. You can find him at Kyron Samuels, and he is a former offensive lineman in Division I as well as the AFL. So he knows a thing or two about offensive line, and I'm excited to pick the series back up because we're going to be talking about draft prospect Broderick Jones, tackle from Georgia. Kyron, how you doing, man?
Doing really good. Excited to get into this one because I watched this kid play a lot of ball, and I think his best ball is still very well ahead of him. So I'm really excited to get into this one.
Me too, me too. So this is going to be the first of the prospects that we're doing in the Brickwall Breakdown series. We are looking to do 10. Looks like we're going to be probably hitting on 5 tackles, 5 interior offensive linemen, and we're going to get all those out within the next week or two. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a minute since we did Brickwall Breakdowns because we've been hitting on some of the other prospects here, but it's good to get back to the trenches. And we've just been looking at some of the defensive linemen too, so this is kind of a good bounce in the other direction. So he has very much the requisite size. He's being talked about in the first round. Some people have him as a top 10 guy, some people maybe a little bit later. There's some fluctuation there, but 6'5", 311 pounds. So he's not lacking in anything as far as that goes. I think he's a pretty good athlete. I don't think he's a great athlete, just from what I've seen on tape. But what are some of your overall thoughts on Broderick Jones before we jump into the tape here?
Well, one thing is he's definitely a really good athlete for the position. So you'll see a little bit when he gets out in pulls and gets to the second level and does some of that stuff. So the fact that he's an athlete really does help him in his overall case for being the top 10, 15 pick here. And then the other thing that helps him is that he's just a dog. Like, he has a great finisher type of mentality. Like, he's going to be the one going through the whistle sometimes, over the whistle sometimes. So that type of stuff is what you love to see when you pair those measurables with the fact that he is a good athlete for the position and that he just has a terrible, like, nasty, mean streak. Like, those are the things you love to see as an offensive lineman. And he's really, really, really young. So when you pair all those things together, you get a perfect storm for a prospect. So he's the quintessential prospect in this draft, because I don't think he's necessarily as refined as a Peter Skoronski or even a Darnell Wright with his sets and how consistent they are with their technique and their hand placement and all that advanced stuff. But they've also played a lot more ball than this kid. So when you measure all that together and you think about what this kid's going to be in 3, 4, 5 years from now, that's why you get him as a top 10 to 15 projection, because everything you want to see is on the tape.
Yeah. And when I say I don't think he's a great athlete, he has good balance, right? And he has good body control. I think he's not super explosive for a tackle. I mean, I just think he's not getting out of his set super quick. I don't think he gets up to speed super quick on pulls, but all the other things that go along with athleticism are definitely there. So
he's more laterally athletic than. Yes, 100%. So he moves very well side to side. He's not as that's a great analysis, because he's not very explosive in his sets. He's not very explosive even at the point of attack. But that's why I think he has developed some of that finisher mentality, because he has to play through the whistle with the extra effort, because he isn't necessarily the most explosive. So that's a good observation, because he's definitely more laterally. He's more agile than athletic, I would say.
Right. So let's take a look and see what we see. So I cut up a bunch of plays. I sent them to you, about 25, and then you picked out 5 of them, and I didn't get a chance to see which ones you selected. So I'm curious to see which ones you picked out here. But all right, let's jump into
4 good ones and a bad one. So I picked the bad rep on purpose because I wanted to show some of the inconsistencies.
All right, so first one here. Let's see what we see.
All right. So this is one of the good reps that I really like from him. It just shows, like, when he's at his best with his set and his punch placement and his hand placement, how consistent he can be. This is what I think this kid's going to be in 4 or 5 years on a consistent basis. So I never really realized how tight Georgia splits were, by the way. There's a really interesting thing I saw watching these cut-ups, but he has a very square to the line. He's not, you get some of these tackles, they're very slanted, or already the gate's already open. They have their their post foot extremely far up or their kick foot extremely far back. He's very balanced and square in this set. So I think that could be some of the things we're seeing with the lack of explosion out of the set, I think that's something they can probably fix at the next level. If he gets a little bit more of a stagger stance and kind of gets a little bit better base to push off of and be more explosive, I think we can see some better sets from him. But he just stays very square here. He gets inside hands on him, locks him down. His hands are exactly where they're supposed to be in this play. And in the next rep, I'll show you what happens when you don't. You see how he gets his punch inside. He has him locked down. And once you're this big, I mean, you're 6'5", 311 with athleticism and the strength. Once you get your hands on a guy like this, he's pretty much done. And I love how his feet never quite click together. So he keeps his base pretty good, and then he anchors very well here. So this is a quintessential pass rush rep. This is what you want it to look like when you're protecting your quarterback on the blind side. And you see the nasty mean streak. He starts to finish there. As soon as the guy tries to disengage, he tries to run him through a little bit. So you get a little bit of everything I love about Broderick Jones in this clip. And I think this is what it's going to be consistently in a couple years. But he's not quite there yet.
Yeah, and obviously left tackle here. I mean, he'll have something to help you see that. But the hands are kind of late here. They're a little bit low.
Yeah, that's what we're going to see in the next clip. This is why I picked the next clip for sure, because you see what happens when he doesn't get his hands in and then he kind of mistimes the punch.
But he has really good length. I mean, you see this is a small rusher, right? This is not a big dude that he's going up against. So he has a clear length advantage. But the hands are quick, right? So they're low, but then punch timing is good.
Yep.
All right.
And like I said, he's only played, I believe, 20 games he started. So when you think about offensive line play, there's not a ton at all. I think he's going to get so much better. But this is kind of one of the reps where you see, and it doesn't affect the play, the bottom line of the play, but on the next level, this is where you're going to see him maybe struggle a little bit. His stance looks the same. His hands are in the same place. But watch how he gets beat on the inside this time, because the defensive lineman gets his hands inside, and he has a little bit of leverage to strike and shed here. So we can go ahead and play this one.
Yeah, exactly. So whereas before, hands are late, but he gets the inside punch. He gives up the inside leverage on this and kind of goes in with like a, I don't know what the technique is called when you put your hands so wide, but like almost like a hug.
That's called I'm bigger than you and I'm stronger than you, so I think that I can just hug you. And like, I mean, that's literally how it goes sometimes. And get your hands on. We've always been taught that, right, as offensive linemen. But there's a technique and there's a rhyme to the reason. So I think he has to do a better job of focusing on his technique, getting his punch placement. And I think a lot of what you said in the earlier can really help him getting his hands already up. Any offensive line coach, I know he's not taught to shoot from his hips up. So getting his hands up and having his hands ready to strike and shed, that's going to be, ready to strike and to anchor, that's going to be paramount for him at the next level. So those little things can take him from a really good player that we see now to a great player, and I think a really, really, really good pro. But that's the difference. The first rep and then this rep, you see a little bit of the inconsistencies here. And that's just due to he's so young, man. Like I said, I think he's only 20 years old, just turned 20. He's going to be really good for a really long time. Just refine some of this technique, and I think we'll see him make a big jump from year 2, 3 in the NFL. I think you'll start to see him really, really shine.
Right. And I don't follow college football closely enough to just know who number 4 is off the top of my head. But, he's not going to be bigger and stronger than every single player in the NFL, right? There's going to be some 265, 270 pound defensive ends who are going to have a lot of great length. So this is just not going to work, right? It lasts just long enough for Bennett to get the ball out here, but that could go very poorly. All right.
Right.
All right.
Here's one of my
now
favorite
we are versus Oregon.
Yeah. But this is where you see some of the athleticism that I was talking about. If he can be consistent right here, if he can be consistent with this, and his hands still weren't great here. I think he still could have timed his punch a little bit better. But if he can be consistent with this kick and this body placement, it's going to be hard. I mean, he stays on the line. He's widening the pocket. He's not getting too out there to give up his inside leverage. He's widening and vertical at the same time, which is really, really hard to do. Very, very advanced kick right there. And he knew exactly when to open his hip and get his hands on, and then he locks him down. So the thing I see here for Broderick Jones is he still let him get a little close to his body. I still wish he would time the punch a little bit better, but the set is so good. The set is so wide. It's timed perfectly. He can avoid giving up leverage or giving up quarterback depth here, because he's such a good athlete. Once he gets his hands on and he's so strong, he kind of eliminates that. But if we're talking about going from really good here to like great and like dominating on the next level, those are the little details that he has to refine. So there's a theme here. Like, he's really good. We see some of the explosive, the athleticism. We see some of the strength from the punch and the anchoring. But the little refinement in the details and the technique is where this guy's going to really make a quantum leap.
Yeah, I mean, you can see, so we've got 3 full steps plus from the defensive lineman before the hands even go up, right? And this is
Right.
probably one of the fastest sets that I've seen him make, one of the quickest off the line. So it's like you kind of know he can, but I'm just
Right.
wondering if he just doesn't feel like he has to, in general. But yeah, so that's a third step. Now the hands finally come up. And again, he's bigger than this defensive end, so it worked for him, but he's going to have to keep him a little bit higher. And then this is just a shutdown rep.
Right. But that's like, so the first rep, you get to see a little bit of the punch placement and those things, and not as much of the athleticism. This rep, you got to see a little bit of athleticism. If he could blend those two together with the first rep and this rep here, then you get a all pro, a Pro Bowl type player for a very long time. So if he can blend those things and really refine these details, I think he's going to be a really good guy in the NFL.
All right.
Now we got some of the
Next
fun
up.
clips here. We got some run stuff here. So this is what I mean. They pull a ton. I mean,
Yeah.
you get the double downs, and you see him out here in space. It's a marvel to see guys move like this, because you didn't really see a ton of it. Even when I was younger and I was coming up, having guys to look at. I mean, we had some decent athletes, right? But we had a bunch of maulers. I mean, Richie Incognito was like the guy when I was coming up that everybody liked, because he was so nasty and he was so physical at the point of attack, and kind of guys like that. Even I don't know if you remember Marshall Yonda from the Baltimore Ravens, just nasty guys, right? You're seeing guys get out here and move in space like this now and taking on, small defensive backs. And he didn't like just, dominate them and run them off the field here, but just watching them move in space and make the block to spring a touchdown run here. Oh, I think he scored a touchdown, but spring a big run here is just pretty exciting to see when you see a guy that can get up to the second level and be an asset in the run game, outside, inside, zone, power, put whatever you decide to do, whatever scheme you're going to do, which Tom Monken did all of that at the University of Georgia, which is another benefit I think he has, because even though he didn't play a ton of football, he played a lot of different schemes and had to learn a lot. So, but when you get the guy that can help you in all of these facets, I think that's why everybody's so excited about him as a prospect. And he went from fringe first round after the season to projected top 15, top 10 pick after everybody sat with this tape and kind of seeing what he had to offer and match that with his projection.
Yeah. And so I love that, he makes sure that he hits, I guess that's what that looks like, a linebacker maybe, or safety. So he gets a little contact with the safety to make sure that he can't just cut into the backfield too quickly. And then comes out, squares up, and then in space, he's able to get onto the defensive back. Now, I mean, I love that he does want to just like mash that DB, but like also, there's going to be some pretty shifty DBs, so getting hands on him would also probably be a wise move here. But you see the ability in space, which is really nice for sure.
Right. But yeah, this is like I said, there's a thing here with every one of these clips. If he gets the little refinement, he gets the little details now, he's going to be a very, very dominant player. So really excited to look at some of this more run stuff.
All right. Let me see which one this is. I think I might know which one this is.
Got a little fair look here, walk down. But this is one of my favorite clips here.
All right.
But it just shows some of the, like you said, the lateral quickness, right? Look how explosive. We talked about maybe lacking exposure sometimes. He got out of his stance very, very well here. So this is one of the few times that I really see him explode. But this is what he does laterally, right? He gets it sealed off. A lot of times people are, they get the block, the initial block, and then they lose the contain. They lose the inside leverage and get beat across their face, and that becomes a no gain, right? I think those are the real moments where you see the strength, the play strength of the kid, because once he gets his inside arm and he gets him and he can get his hands inside, there's no going inside. You have no game. You're done. There's no counter move that you can do here. And that's a guy that's going to get drafted pretty high. I believe that's a Noah Sewell. So that's not some, scrub kid. He's going up against another pro here, and he's showing that real play strength. Once he gets his hands on you and he gets his feet in the right place, there's nothing you can do. There's no counter move. You're just done. So I really, really like what I saw from him here. And I think this is the type of stuff that he's much more consistent within the run game. I don't have nearly as many concerns about him transitioning as a run blocker on the next level, because I think he's going to dominate run blocking from the time he steps on the field. But when you get him into pass blocking and just some of the consistencies in his set, his punch, the little details, like I've mentioned before in this entire video, that's what's going to take him from a really good player and a projected first round type guy, Pro Bowl guy, to a Pro Bowl guy, maybe all pro one day. And I don't think the transition is going to be necessarily as difficult as a lot of people do, because I think if you have a good offensive line coach who gets the right system, he's going to teach this kid all those things. These aren't very hard things to learn. It's just consistency in practice, consistency in preseason games, getting his feet wet, and then he should be able to let loose in the NFL.
Yeah, I love this. So he engages, he's moving him out of the gap. The right guard gets beat here, but he manages to hold on just long enough for the running back to make a nice move there. But then look at this gap. He just drives him way out of the play. I mean, there is so much space here. This is so it's right here. This is where it happens. So right here, he just throws him out of the play and then begins to drive him back. So again, great strength for sure. So Jones is interesting because does Georgia just consistently rotate guys in on the offensive line? Because I'm sure they just got a lot of prospects or a lot of potential guys that are they're looking at for next year and so on. But it's like there were a lot of plays where I'm like, okay, so I see him play a drive and I'm like ready to get back in, and now I have to wait for an entire drive before I see him again because there's some other guy at left tackle. It's I forget.
They started doing it last year. But they had some injuries along the offensive line, and everybody filled in. So Merriam Mims, we're going to be doing a breakdown on him next year. He barely even played for them. He only started a couple games, but he rotates in. They had some guys coming off the bench. I mean, they rotate their guards a lot too. So they just have a ton of depth. They have guys that know the system, some veteran guys, and I think they just have a really good system to where you can rotate offensive linemen. I don't think people understand how valuable that is. Offensive line is a tiring position, man. Like, especially if you're a more run-heavy offense and you're out there grinding and you're banging every play. We did it in college back when I was at Jacksonville State. We had between myself and the rest of the guys, I think we had 8 guys that signed NFL contracts at some point. So we were very fortunate as an FCS school at the time to have that amount of depth. So we did that. I would go 2 series, and then I would come out, and then when I came back, I would go to left guard, and the guy that was playing left guard would go to right guard, and we would just continue a circle just like that the entire game. And it helped us stay fresh by the fourth quarter when everybody's tired on the other team, because it's already FCS. You don't have a ton of depth anyway. We were still really fresh. It helped us out when we played Auburn too. So it kind of helped spell some of the disparity between SEC and OVC, because we were able to stay fresh the entire game and not have the depth be as big an issue. So Georgia does a lot of that stuff too. I don't know if people really realize that. So that's a good observation. I know we're focusing on him, so you're probably like, where is he? But a lot of people don't know Georgia really does that a lot, and I think it helps them out.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seemed to. I mean, it goes against some of the traditional ideology in the NFL where it's like you've got your 5 starters and every play they're available, they're in, right? Because there's continuity
NFL is totally
there.
Different.
Well, I think one of the reasons is it's for one thing, guys, they want playing time, right? Because it's important for them to get second contracts. Another thing is that the schemes are really complicated, and so you need that consistency. Like, you need to know exactly how the guy next to you is going to react to every situation, right? So that plays into it as well. But yeah, at first I was like, is he just getting hurt? Like, is he having to take plays off? And then I'm realizing that they're doing it kind of across the line. And there's guys moving from one spot to another. And
there's a big difference between having 10 5-stars and having a starter. Then the NFL, the difference between a starter and a practice squad guy is huge, right? So yeah, that's definitely a reason. But knock on wood, those Georgia kids have been pretty healthy. They haven't had a lot of injuries, and I can't wait. We're going to be doing a lot of Georgia kids coming next year. My favorite, if he came out this year, he would have been my favorite offensive lineman in the draft this year. But Seth Van Pran, the center at Georgia, I think he's the best offensive lineman in the country. I thought he was this past year. And they have a Merriam Mims. He's going to be coming out. He's going to be playing right tackle. They may or may not move him to left tackle. I'm not sure. But we're going to be doing breakdowns on this Georgia offensive line for a very long time, because they have 2 kids that are going to be French first round guys next year as well. So really excited about what they're doing there. And Coach Stacey Searles is doing a really good job.
Yeah, and I can't go any farther without mentioning Devin Willock. So like that sucked, man, because I don't follow college football that closely. I knew that something had happened, right? It was the whole
Right.
thing with Jalen Carter. I didn't know who the player was who had passed in the car accident, and I'm seeing this massive number 77 guard. He's just huge. He's 6'7". He's super explosive, and he's just popping on tape when he's in next to Jones here. And I'm like, man, who's this guy? I'm like, why isn't this guy coming out? So I look it up, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's
Right.
so. I just want to shout out to him. It's super unfortunate, and it stinks to have a guy so young not be there, and a lot of potential
Right.
too. So it's a shame. Just wanted to shout him out,
For sure.
because I wouldn't have any other opportunity to do that really. So, but all right. So that's Georgia offensive tackle Broderick Jones. Looks like he's going to be a good pro. I just, my understanding of like baseline NFL offensive line skill is is pretty reasonable. So I haven't spent a lot of time looking at college offensive linemen. So now I'm curious to see, since this is really the first guy I've taken the time to really look into this year, where everybody else stacks up, right? So I can't really give a good perspective on where he is versus some of the other guys. But as we do these, I'll be
Right.
able to start slotting them in where I think they should go and whatnot. But obviously, a talented player, very strong, ready to contribute in the run game. Definitely has moments of high skill level and pass protection, but needs to be more consistent and polish up a few things. But I think definitely projected to be a starter day one in the NFL
Yeah.
for sure. Any closing thoughts on him before we get out of here today?
More of the same. Like I said, I think he's going to be really good once he refines the little details and the technique. And I think that's where the offensive line coach is going to be, paramount for him in the NFL. If he gets a good offensive line coach, a guy that can really take his game from being really good to great, I think you're going to get a really good player and a really good player fast. I think he can make a seamless transition. And we've seen it. I mean, we've seen Rashawn Slater come in and become one of the best tackles in the NFL. We've seen Tristan Wirfs come in and become one of the best tackles in the NFL in a very short amount of time. So Panay Sewell is another guy that's come in, and he has some of the same issues with refining technique. I think he's a bit more explosive of an athlete than the Broderick type is, but he had the same problems with the technique, cleaning that stuff up. So we've seen enough examples to where if you can get a guy and kind of refine some of the details and get their hands in the right place and their feet in the right place most of the time, these young guys, these young tackles can come in and start and contribute at a high level immediately. So that's what I'm projecting for him. This is what I hope for him, and I hope he goes to the right spot. I would love to see him at the Titans, like at pick number 11. I think if they're not going to go quarterback there, getting him with Mike Vrabel and company in Tennessee, and just keeping him in the South. I know that sounds funny, but keeping him in the South was just the mentality. It's just different, like not in the cold weather thing where you don't have to worry about stuff like that. So I think it'll be a really good place for him, and I think he's going to be totally fine once he gets to the NFL.
Yeah. Try telling Titans fans to take another Georgia tackle and see how excited they are about that. Yeah. So for sure, I think that would be a good fit though. And I could definitely see that happening. All right. You can find me at DMaxDean. You can find Kyron at Kyron Samuels. You can find Defiant Takes Football at Defiant Takes on all social media outlets. We're going to be doing many more of these brick wall breakdowns for offensive line play. You can find Nick and I doing the DTF film sessions. For all of the other prospects at every other position, we are live every Monday and Thursday doing live streams in the morning, which are also released on our podcast feed if you want to keep up with those. And all written content is going to be over at DefiantTakesFootball.com. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us, and be back for more soon.